Gauranga, Vam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale, Śrīmate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane, Namaste Saraswati Deve, Gauravani Pacharane, Nirvishesha Shindavadi Paskyatyade Siddharne. Om Agyana Timanandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chaksur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Vrijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakans Vitams Cha Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishubhana Siddhadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Pancha Kappa Trubhyascha Kripa Sinubhyevacha Patidanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranitananda Shadvaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 8, text number, the character of Bharat Maharaj, text number 37. But I'm not going to read the Sanskrit. I'll just read the translation. At the end of death, the king saw that the deer was sitting by his side, exactly like his own son, and was lamenting his death. Actually, the mind of the king was absorbed in the body of the deer, and consequently, like those bereft of Krishna consciousness, he left the world. The deer and his material body had acquired the body of a deer. However, there was one advantage. Although he lost his human body and received the body of a deer, he did not forget the incidents of his past life. So please repeat. At the time of death, the king saw that the deer was sitting by his side, exactly like his own son, and was lamenting his death. Actually, the mind of the king was absorbed in the body of the deer. And consequently, like those bereft of Krishna consciousness, he left the world, the deer, and his material body, and acquired the body of a deer. However, there was one advantage. Although he lost his human body and received the body of a deer, he did not forget the incidences of his past life. Purport. There was a difference between Bharat Maharaj's acquiring a deer body and others acquiring different bodies according to their mental condition at the time of death. After death, others forget everything that has happened in their past lives. But Bharat Maharaj did not forget. According to the Bhagavad Gita, yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajantyanta kalevaraṁ tam tam evaiti konteya sada tad bhava bhavitaha. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will obtain without fail. Bhagavad Gita 8:6. After quitting his body, a person gets another body according to his mental condition at the time of death. At death, a person always thinks of that subject matter in which he has been engrossed during his life. According to this law, because Bharat Maharaj was always thinking of the deer and forgetting his worship of the Supreme Lord, he acquired the body of a deer. Actually, due to his having been elevated to the topmost platform of devotional service, he did not forget the incidents of his past life. This special benediction saved him from further deterioration. Due to his past activities in devotional service, he became determined to forget his devotional service, even in the body of a deer. It is therefore said in this verse, mṛtam. Although he had died, Anu afterwards, mṛta-janmānusmṛtir, itara-vat. He did not forget the incidents of his past life as others forget them. As said in the Brahma Samhita, karmani nirdahakti kintu chabakti bhajam. Brahma Samhita 5:54. It is proved herein that due to the grace of the Supreme Lord, a devotee is never vanquished. Due to his willful neglect of devotional service, a devotee may be punished for a short time, but again revives his devotional service and returns home back to Godhead. So the translation again. At the time of death, the king saw that the deer was sitting by his side exactly like his own son and was lamenting his death. Actually, the mind of the king was absorbed in the body of the deer, and consequently, like those bereft of Krishna consciousness, he left the world, the deer and his material body, and acquired the body of a deer. However, there was one advantage. Although he lost his human body and received the body of a deer, he did not forget the incidences of his past life. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskyatyade Satarane. There are a number of lessons that we can learn from this particular verse, and Prabhupada points out that two of them, here in the purport, that whatever we think of at the time of death, we're sure to get that state of being in our next lifetime. That at the time of death, whatever we're thinking about will not be an accident, it'll be according to what we're most absorbed in at that particular time, what the mind is most absorbed in. Therefore it is said, Udarat ātmanam avasarayat, ātma-jam bandhur, ātma-jam ātmanaḥ, bandhur ātma-jam yenaiva ātma-jita, anātmanastu shatrudve varte ātma-jam. That a man has to elevate himself by his own mind and not degrade himself, that the mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. For one who has conquered the mind is the best of friends, and for one who has failed to do so, his very mind will be the greatest enemy. As we know, the mind is conquered by thinking about Krishna. Otherwise, the mind, if it's not thinking about Krishna, must think about the three modes of material nature. Matchita sarvadoragani, mat-prasada tarishyasi, atate tvamahankaram, nashoshasi vinangshasi. Krishna told Arjuna, Matchita sarvadoragani, if you put your consciousness upon me, then you'll pass over all the obstacles of conditional life by my grace. Matchita sarva duragani, matprasada tarishyasi, atachet tvam ahankaram. But if you're not listening to me, you're absorbed in your false ego, nushosyasi ivānuśocantam, then no one can really know what's going to... your destination will be unknown. There is a process of thinking about Krishna, and that process, Krishna says, begins with hearing. Tats trinu, Krishna says, hear from me. Maya sakta manakparta yogam yunjanmarashaya samshayam samagramam ita-gyasasi tachnu. Everything begins with hearing. Either material life or spiritual life is based upon hearing. When we hear the glories about something, then naturally the mind becomes attracted to try to experience it. The modern civilization exists on being expert at convincing people that something which is not very glorious is glorious, and something which is quite glorious is not very glorious. That's been going on since time immemorial. Otherwise, Prahladanand Maharaj wouldn't have said, Nate vidu swartakatim hi Vishnu darashya ye bahir artamanina. People don't know that the goal of life is to put the mind upon Krishna. Nate vidu swartakatim hi Vishnu. That Krishna is the actual goal of life. And if they don't know that Krishna is the goal of life, then compared to Krishna, everything else is insignificant. Te vidu swartakatim Vishnu darashya ye bahir artamanina. And it must be part of this external energy. But people don't know that, and therefore they're busily engaged in trying to hear the glories of so many insignificant things. And for that reason, the internet has become very popular, because people have the opportunity to ride the chariot of their mind throughout this entire material planet. Pantastu koti shatavatsara sambragamyo. The mind could very quickly move from one thing to the next. And one can hear about the glories of so many things. If you want to buy shoes, there are thousands of shoes. Shotavyadishi rajanja shrinam shanti sahasrashaha. That Shukadeva Goswami says, if one is not interested in ātma-tattva, in the eternality of the soul, then there's thousands of things to hear about. And the internet has provided us with an opportunity to surf the internet, to compare thousands of shoes together. And what to speak of shoes, socks, hats, coats, umbrellas, everything. One can spend one's whole life trying to choose. And finally, when one makes the choice, one has to leave the body and take another body to come back and fulfill that choice. Or to pay off the credit card that one utilized to make all those choices with. But the actual choice is either we're going to try to fix the mind upon Krishna, or we're going to busily engage in absorbing our minds in material things. Generally, especially in Kali Yuga, the more one absorbs one's mind in material energy, the more it's gradually dragged down to the lower and lower modes of nature. One tries to taste the mode of goodness, one gets tired, one becomes interested in tasting the mode of passion, one gets tired and one goes into ignorance and goes down, 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 and then one thinks the body of a dog would not be bad. Prabhupada was giving a lecture at a university, and he said, if you act like a dog, then you'll become a dog. And after that, one student raised her hand and said, Swamiji, you say that if I act like a dog, that I'm going to become a dog. So Prabhupada said, yes. And she said, well, I'd like you to know that I don't mind if I become a dog. I actually want to become a dog. So Prabhupada raised his hand and said, you have my blessings. The whole material universe is created so that we can fully engage ourselves in trying to experience what it's like to be the enjoyer and the controller in 8,400,000 species of life. And everyone is glorifying some particular aspect of material sense gratification, and by absorbing the mind in that particular aspect, in that or other aspects, then one becomes eligible to get a certain type of body in one's next lifetime. On the other hand, there's a process of absorbing the mind in Krishna consciousness. We cannot think that when we're chanting Hare Krishna or even performing the other aspects of devotional service, such as deity worship, or hearing and chanting about Krishna through the scriptures, or by serving the devotees, or living in a holy place, then we're fully conscious of Krishna. That there's a process of gradually absorbing the mind fully in Krishna and experiencing Krishna fully. Now, according to our past activities, our minds may be more or less covered by the illusory energy, but they're uncovered as we perform the process of devotional service with more undeviation and more enthusiasm, or more priti-purvakam. Didami buddhi-yogam tam, tesham sadatam yuktanam, bhajantam priti-purvakam, didami buddhi-yogam tam yena mam upiyanti te. To those who are constantly devoted to worshiping me with love, then I give them the intelligence by which they can come to me. And of course the previous verse is much chita, much kata, prana, bodhiyantash parashparam. Katayantash shamam nityam, tushanti charamanti cha. Krishna says, I am the Supreme. Everything is coming from me. One who can experience my divine energies that come from me and myself, then in that ocean of love and the ocean of pleasure, then one develops bhava. Bhava means that one's original feelings towards Krishna are awakened. Now we have a kind of bhava, that bhava is for this gross and subtle material body. As we originally loved Krishna, now we love the material world in the form of our gross and subtle bodies, and extend it to our family, to our society, to our nation, whatever. Extend the same concept, the same loving feelings that originally for Krishna, we try to extend them to other objects in this material world. So love is there, deity worship is there. We have to choose which deity we want to worship, either our gross and subtle material bodies or Krishna. The more we worship our gross and subtle bodies, then the more we're assured of getting another gross and subtle body at the end of this one to begin the process of worship all over again. But hearing about Krishna is the beginning of worshiping Krishna. That doesn't mean that we fully experience Krishna, but if we can understand something, because hearing implies we're actually using our intelligence to try to understand something. So Krishna begins with something simple. Denosminita dehe kamaram yovanam jara tata dahantara praptira diryas tatra namuyate. Something which should be apparent, the fact that our bodies are changing, but we're not changing. But still we think we're temporary. Still we're anxiety. Even though it's the most obvious thing to us is the very fact that we exist. Nothing could be more obvious than that. If someone thinks that they don't exist, then the question is, who's thinking that they don't exist? So we know we're existing, and we know we've existed throughout all these different changes of bodies, but still due to the influence of illusion, we think that at the end of this body, that I'll cease to exist. Although we haven't ceased to exist, in spite of all these different bodies coming and going. Therefore, on one side we can see that by hearing from Krishna, we get intelligence. On the other side, we can see that Krishna's energy, called illusion, doesn't let up so easily. Just by hearing something doesn't mean that we've completely experienced it or realized it. But Krishna consciousness is meant for realization, is meant for experience, is not meant to simply acquire theoretical knowledge. Therefore, we have to hear from authoritative sources. Otherwise, we can go on hearing the wrong thing and get a lot of knowledge about the wrong thing and simply wind up with the wrong thing. You can get so many zeros and you can add them all together and the combined sum is 0. But Prabhupada said if you put a 1 in front of it, then it becomes a big number. So that 1 means to hear from the right source with the right attitude, then we might get some perspective of what Krishna and his representatives are actually saying. Because it's not enough just to hear, we have to also remember what was said. If we don't remember what was said, then it's as good as not even hearing, practically speaking. Because unless we can remember what's being said, then we can't see what's from different points of view. We have to hear and then try to remember the different points of view and then try to assimilate that knowledge with our intelligence so we can actually see it with our eyes. We can understand what actually we're supposed to do with that information. Because if we don't know what to do with the information, if we don't see what's being said by Krishna and his representatives so we can practically apply it within our lives, then we'll have to go on doing the same thing over and over again. Punak punas charvita charvananam. We may imagine we have so much knowledge, we have so much information, but if we don't see that knowledge clearly and we don't know how to apply it, or we know how to apply it but we don't apply it, then we'll be forced to act according to the modes of material nature anyhow. No matter how much we imagine ourselves to be advanced in Krishna consciousness, that actually we'll still be under the spell of the modes of material nature. And unless we can understand what is the realm of spiritual life, then we won't know what to do. In other words, we may get so much knowledge supposedly in Krishna consciousness, but if we don't know the field in which we're supposed to apply it, then it's as good as not having it at all. Our application will be quite limited. Therefore, in Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada points out that the field of the activities for the devotees is that of devotional service. And that devotional service begins at the Brahma-bhuta platform. Brahma-bhuta prasanatma nishoshiti nakangshati samak sarveshu bhuteshu mad-bhaktim labhate param. One can only be peaceful and happy and jolly when one gives up hankering and lamentation. When one can see all living entities as being spiritual beings and reciprocate with them on the spiritual platform. Then one can begin actual devotional service, which is bhakti. And bhakti means, for the devotee aspiring to come to the platform of pure devotional service, the application is Ishvareta dineshu balisheshu sudvasucha prema maitri kripo peka yat karoti samadhimaha. The field of our activities is to love Krishna, Ishvara, to try to develop prema. And the field of activities, while we're developing prema for Krishna, is to see Krishna where he actually is. And that means he's in the heart of the devotees, as well as in the form of the deity, as the form of the deity. Therefore, for the devotees is Maitri. Worship of the devotee who's constantly chanting Hare Krishna, respect for the devotee who's trying to learn how to chant Hare Krishna, respect within the mind for the devotees, for those who are chanting Hare Krishna but not following the principles very strictly of devotional service. So this is Maitri, friendship, cooperation. And what are we cooperating for? To help each other become Krishna conscious, parashparam, and to give kripa to the baleshu, to those who are innocent, are like children, being misled by the wrong information. And for those who are actually envious that those are nimatsara, matsara, then there's upeksha. So that's the field of activities that we have to try to practice developing. And if we try to develop it with knowledge, hearing doesn't stop. Remembering, hearing from different perspectives, the same information, and then developing, remembering what we've heard and put it into perspective, and then try to apply it. As we try to apply it with enthusiasm and try to become steady, then tadānīm buddhi yogam tam. Then Krishna will give us the intelligence by which we can make progress in the field. If we have the right field, then Krishna will give us intelligence how to become better love him, how to develop our love for Krishna, our service for Krishna, for the service of the Sankirtan movement, cooperating with the devotees and helping the innocent and defeating atheistic propaganda. Then Krishna will give us intelligence how to do that. And if we accept that intelligence and apply it in that field of activities, then tesham eva nukam bharatam. Then Krishna, when he sees fit, when he sees our sincerity, then he reveals within our heart the shining lamp of knowledge, the darkness. He eradicates with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born out of ignorance. So Krishna will personally do that. So here in this particular case, we find Bharat Maharaj has gone through the preliminary stages of sadhana bhakti, practically speaking. According to our acharyas, he was just on the threshold of bhava bhakti. Bhava bhakti, there's uttama adhikari, there is no fall down. But bhava bhakti is on different stages also. Bhava bhakti is just one ray of the sunlight of prema. Although bhava bhakti is a very exalted position, and what to speak of bhava bhakti, that as we can see in anartha nivritti, we don't even know what anarthas we have. All we can see is that if I don't feel love for Krishna, I don't feel love for Krishna's devotees, I don't feel compassion to the innocent, and I'm attached to association some way or another with the non-devotees, obviously I'm lacking in my purity of devotional service. So in anartha, even if we're practicing bhajana kriya, it goes on different stages, anartha bhajana kriya, and then we have anartha nivritti. There's a struggle sometimes we're trying to absorb our minds in Krishna, doing the things which will absorb our mind in Krishna, the 9 processes of devotional service, and the 5 powerful processes of bhakti, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevam, Archanam, Bandhanam, Sakyam, Atma-nivedanam, or, as I said, chanting the holy name and living in a holy place and worshiping the deities, hearing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and serving the devotees. Sometimes we're trying to absorb our minds in these activities, and where we're not, then automatically the mind becomes absorbed in other activities. So to give up the other activities and to absorb the mind in Krishna comes to the stage of Nishtha, Brahma-bhuta, from which actual devotional service begins, steadily. Sometimes we may be, when we're practicing devotional service seriously and sincerely, Krishna may bestow some ecstasy upon us, which will purify our heart and allow us to see things more clearly. But that doesn't mean that automatically we become pure devotees, simply due to a little ecstasy. And at the stage of anartha-nivritti, and when we come to the stage of nishtha, then one is liberated from the bodily concept of life, but one has not fully developed one's spiritual concept of life. One knows that the material concept of life is wrong, just like we may know we're not this body, but that doesn't mean we know who we are. As a matter of fact, we can understand to some extent that we're not this body, but still we have no idea who we are. We just have some idea that we're dasa, anudasa. So at that stage, one takes initiation. One is convinced I'm not this body, and theoretically knows I'm the servant of Krishna, and one wants to give up one's false ego completely, and therefore one takes to the process of sadhana bhakti under the instructions of a bona fide spiritual master who teaches one how to properly love Krishna and serve him, how to properly exchange loving exchanges with the devotees appropriately, according to the devotees' levels of advancement, and how to work seriously to bring Krishna's other children back to the spiritual kingdom, and how to defeat atheistic propaganda or be neglectful of material association. When one can absorb one's mind with more enthusiasm, more devotion, more care and attention, then gradually one's senses become purified and one comes to the platform of ruchi, or one has a taste for devotional service, which means that one can begin to experience with one's spiritual senses the ecstasy and the pleasure of Krishna's energies. One sees everything in relation to Krishna and sees everything in Krishna. So Krishna is there always, and therefore one is able to experience everything and everyone in relation to Krishna. And everything in relation to Krishna is that of transcendental happiness and pleasure. And when that pleasure increases, that happiness increases, in the service of Krishna increases the happiness and the pleasure, then one comes to the platform of asakti, that the mind is addicted to devotional service and Krishna consciousness and can't bear to live for a moment without Krishna. But still one is not safe. This is the message of Bharat Maharaj. Even when we come to such a high platform, if we become proud of our achievement or neglectful of our spiritual activities, even we start become aware of our relationship with Krishna, we start feeling who we actually are. Still, the illusory energy is so powerful that natural affection we have for Krishna may be instantaneously transmitted to even an insignificant deer. To Bharat Maharaj, whose senses and mind and feelings were purified and awakened, when he transferred his attention to the deer, he fully transferred his attention to the deer, and therefore gradually became neglectful of his worship of Krishna. Just like we have the example of Daksha, Daksha was, of course, offensive towards Narada Muni. Well, first he was offensive towards Lord Shiva, and he had his head cut off, and he received the head of a goat. He left his body soon afterwards, and again was born as Daksha. And when he was born as Daksha, he still had his duty to perform, and therefore he underwent great austerities in order to get the blessings of Krishna. So finally Krishna saw his sincerity. He came in his multi-armed form, riding on the back of Garuda, along with so many demigods. And Daksha, who was offering prayers while standing, became so overwhelmed with ecstasy that he had to sit down. He could no longer stand. And when Lord Vishnu asked him, what kind of benediction you want? He said, I want a benediction for unlimited sex life. He was experiencing so much ecstasy in the association of Krishna, but instead of asking for pure Krishna consciousness, he wanted pure material experience. So that's the nature of Maya. Maya has a hard time tricking someone like Bharat Maharaj. Seemingly, she doesn't have such a hard time with us. We're very anxious, willing victims. Maya, you haven't tricked me lately. Isn't it about time? Otherwise, I feel guilty. I should play a little hard to get so you become even more attractive. But we should, here at the stage when one's feelings are beginning to awaken and one's mind is always on Krishna, still one can become deviated. But still the principle is there. Neha bhikramana shosti pratyavayo navidite swapamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. That on this path there's no loss or diminution, and even a little advancement can protect one from the greatest danger. So nothing is lost. At the same time, it is not that we can take shelter of one instruction from Bhagavad Gita, and when the Yamadutas come to take us away, we say, wait a second, haven't you read the Bhagavad Gita? Neha bhikramana shosti pradya. Don't you know that verse? Well, sit here for a while and I'll teach it to you. No, the Yamadutas may not be so impressed. They'll say, well, do you know this verse? Yam yam vapis ran vavan tyan tyan te kalevaraṁ tam tam vaiti kontiya sada sada bhavita. And when you're before Yamaraj, you can quote your other verse and see what he does. We're just doing our duty. Unfortunately, you didn't always do your duty. We have to assimilate the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, and then we'll be able to see things properly and perform our activities properly, so that we can become elevated to the platform of pure Krishna consciousness, and then tyaktva deham punarjanma naitimam eti sorjana. Then there won't be coming any back again. When we understand Krishna in truth, janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naitimam eti sorjana. So that we have to come to. We want to come back to the spiritual world. Tatvataha. Tatvataha means we have to directly experience Krishna. Minimum qualification, according to the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, is we have to practically fully develop Bhava Bhakti right before Prema. Then we can go and join Krishna in his Leela in some universe and get trained up further to become qualified to go back to the spiritual world. But we should know, unless we're constantly feeling separation from Krishna in devotional ecstasy, always absorbed, practically living in Krishna's pastimes, then we'll have to come back and practice some more before we can actually become eligible either to join Krishna in his pastimes in some universe, or to go, and after that to go back to the spiritual world. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Today is Ramanuja's appearance day, I believe. Is that right? Disappearance. So Ramanujacharya was the great Acharya, one of our 4 sampradayas. He is one of the leaders of the Sri Sampradaya, which taught Viṣiṣṭa-Dvaita philosophy, which means that God, the living entity, the material nature, of all the same nature. They're all spiritual. Madhvacharya taught Dvaita philosophy, Dvaita, that the living entities and God are the same nature, but they're different. And of course we know that our philosophy is Achintya Bheda Tattva. Yes, they're all simultaneously one, but they're different. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught the synthesis of all the different sampradayas. But Ramanujacharya was a great Acharya, and he particularly tried to defeat the Sankaracharya philosophy that everything is one. So Ramanujacharya established everything is one, but spiritual, and everything is not one. Well, everything is one, but we have a spiritual relation with Krishna, and we're not part of the material nature, and that they're all real, they're all spiritual, rather than Sankaracharya's philosophy that everything is one, but everything we see, the living entity is unreal, Krishna is unreal, there's no reality except for the oneness. So Ramanujacharya taught there's a oneness, but it's all spiritual and it's all eternal one. We all have eternal identities. Krishna has his identity, we have our identity, he has his energies. They're all one eternally. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj, for a wonderful class. You mentioned one point that Daksha was observed in tapasya, and then he was able to take darshan of Lord, and he was in ecstasy, but still his desire did not change. The desire was... So it seems that to change the desire, it's a very difficult task. So because now, like how can we intensify a desire to attain Krishna? Because the desire to enjoy sense gratification is very strong at this phase. So how to increase our...
Because Daksha he started out on the premise that I have to do my duty. So Daksha was quite an elevated personality. And my duty is to propagate the universe, because I'm a servant of Lord Brahma. He's given me that duty. And therefore he took the worship of Krishna up in order to get and become empowered to do his duty. So whatever ecstasy he was feeling, he was being empowered to do his duty as far as he was concerned. He just lacked the proper perspective what his actual ultimate duty was. He understood what his duty was, but he didn't know what his ultimate duty was. Now, as far as ourselves, we're aspiring to find out what our actual duty is. And we're supposed to know that duty at the time of initiation. That is to perform unalloyed, undeviated devotional service to Krishna. And doing so, we learn how to serve the devotees appropriately, according to the different levels of advancement, and help assist Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his mission to spread Krishna consciousness and to give up material association and materialistic association with worldly minded people. So we take initiation, or we take the devotional service with that attitude, and actually try to properly serve all the devotees, and give up our sectarian consciousness that I'm initiated by such and such devotee, and therefore my family is all my godbrothers and sisters, and everyone else is some distant relationship. To give up that mentality, because that's not a devotional mentality. To actually learn how to perceive who's on what level and serve, even on an equal level, others who are more advanced, even on an equal level with my initiating guru, those who are more advanced than me, because that's the instructions from the bona fide spiritual master. So by without serving those devotees on an equal level as my spiritual master, then I'll be disobeying the orders of my spiritual master. And to learn how to cooperate, worship those who are constantly chanting Hare Krishna, those who are engaged in trying to learn how to give up their false egos and serve Krishna and properly reciprocate with the other devotees and help the innocent and avoid the atheists. Unless I can cooperate with them, then I'm not serving the words of our acharyas in disciple succession. It doesn't matter who they're initiated by, who I think they are, that I should properly reciprocate with them. Then Krishna will give me the intelligence, how to properly serve the devotees, how to respect those who are innocent but not strictly following, how to properly respect those devotees who are following but not so advanced. These are the things we have to learn. Then our hearts will become purified. Otherwise, we're not working on the spiritual platform. If we're not working on the spiritual platform, if we're working on Varnashram, we may gradually, on the platform of bodily conception, we may gradually come to the mode of goodness, but that may take a long, long time, many lifetimes. Yes?
Harisha Maharaj. Maharaj, like we see that Dhruva Maharaj, he also performed the austerity for Lord Vishnu. But we at last see his desires got purified, and he did not wanted again any material benedictions, having like more opulence than his grandfather. But here Daksha Maharaj performed the same worship to Lord Vishnu, but he maintained the desire. So what difference is there in both austerities?
Dhruva Maharaj, he had his own personal desire. It had nothing to do with any bona fide instruction coming from any authority. He just was angry that he could not sit on the lap of his father, and therefore, personally, he wanted a kingdom greater than that of his great-grandfather, Lord Brahma. So he went there with that strong desire, and on the basis of that strong desire, he realized that Krishna came personally before him. Then he gave up that desire, but it was so strong that Vishnu reciprocated with that desire. Desires are so strong that they can't be. Lord Vishnu didn't. Well, his desire was so strong. Lord Vishnu didn't neglect it, but gave him the opportunity to experience it. Even when we see Krishna face to face, we may still have some desire because we don't know what it's like. Still may be there. Well, what if I didn't see Vishnu? What would have happened if I would have went there and did this and that? So Krishna gave him the opportunity to experience what it would be like, but in Krishna consciousness. So Krishna just gave Dhruva Maharaj that opportunity as a further opportunity to advance in Krishna consciousness, that's all, to finally get rid of whatever desires, material desires he may still have within his heart that he was guarding by experience. Just like Sudama, he was fully Krishna conscious, but he still had some aversion to material existence. So Krishna gave him an opportunity to fully experience material existence in full consciousness of Krishna. So to get rid of any possible material desire for experience for material desires. Now Daksha, on the other hand, he was dutifully performing his service to Lord Brahma, and therefore there was no need for him to give up. Of course, he had his personal desires too, obviously, but he didn't feel any need. He was fixed on focusing his consciousness upon Krishna, upon fulfilling his desire. And at the same time, even when he became, as a pradaksha, as a prajapati, still it's not that he became completely unconscious of Krishna. No one becomes, especially on such an elevated platform. But he was doing his activities dutifully. Further elevation meant that he probably would have had to find a bona fide spiritual master like Narada Muni, who he offended. So there was no opportunity to actually understand what the higher duty is, because he already wound up offending Narada Muni. And therefore he was left with a material duty. And that's what he did. He fulfilled his material duty, but because of offenses against the Vaishnava, therefore he never found out what his spiritual duty should have been. And therefore he was stuck on the material platform, although very elevated.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Grantharaj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande. That's why you couldn't find out. Yeah, if you stand the Vaishnava, you won't find out what your duty is to Krishna. Yes.
You said that real bhakti starts at the Brahma stage.
Yes.
So that is in this last stage. So what we are doing now? Like
We're practicing. And by nice practicing, we get Krishna's mercy, and we're raised to the Brahma-bhuta platform, where we can actually enter into real devotional service. We're doing devotional service, and at times we can experience ecstasy or happiness in Krishna consciousness, and that will raise us to the platform where we can actually begin to actually see everyone on the same spiritual level, and give up all hankering and lamenting, and to actually do our service simply to please Krishna, without material desire at least.
at that stage.